Hello YouTube family, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking mainland, dwarf, and super dwarf retics. What I prefer and why. Stay tuned. Remember, if you just want to rock with Redline Shipping for all your shipping needs, use Robin60. Good for 2 shipments for 60% off the FedEx retail rate. Tell them Lady Tiz sent you. Okay, so assuming that you're someone who's watching the channel who do not know anything about what I'm speaking on right now, reticulated pythons in general, but maybe you're someone that's new to the hobby and you may be further interested in these animals down the line. When I first started researching reticulated pythons, I researched mainlands because I love big snakes, but I also researched super dwarf at that time, and I'll say the reason why I say super dwarf at that time, because the uneducated me did not understand that there was actually a dwarf reticulated python and how that came about. Throughout the years, I learned the difference. This video is not about explaining to you in detail the difference between a mainland, dwarf, and super dwarf reticulated python. There are some great channels and great breeders. If you want the detail of, when they were found in the 90s, Reach Out Reptiles is probably one of the best ones that I will recommend, honestly, because I think that Garrett goes into detail about the percentages, and he's very integral in the sense of explaining that any drop of mainland doesn't guarantee the size of a reticulated python. And I'm going to talk about that briefly when I talk about which one I prefer. Now, there are some beautiful dwarf retics. There are some beautiful super dwarf retics. I own one dwarf that I absolutely adore. She's a beautiful animal. I have handled super dwarf. There are super dwarf genetics that I am absolutely a fan of. I am a fan of Caluati. I'm a fan of Jampea. I'm a fan of Calatoa. Actually, my dwarf is 6.75% Calatoa and 62.25% Jampea. So the rest of her is Tiger and Het Anery. But for example, my dwarf is not a super dwarf because she is not 100% Jampea. She's not 100% Calatoa, for example. She is bred into the mainland bloodline, so therefore she qualifies as a dwarf because of the percentages that she is of mainland blood. Okay, so with that being said, I think that dwarf and super dwarf reticulated pythons are awesome for people who want the nature of a reticulated python. And what I mean by the nature is, guys, a reticulated python is a reticulated python. For the most part, I would tell you that in my experience, that my dwarf reticulated python or my smaller mainlands are a little bit more or less confident than my larger mainlands. That is my experience. So one of the things I love about the mainland is that the confidence, and they develop that pretty early. That's my berm in the back, just doing whatever she wants to do. Never mind her. So it's important for people to keep in mind, and shout out to the breeders who explain that to people, that no one can guarantee you the size of your reticulated python, even if it's quoted to you as 100% super dwarf. Unless you bred that animal yourself, you have no way of knowing that 100%. So you're not guaranteed size in these animals. They're large animals by nature. I think it's great that some people found a way to make them smaller. However, by nature, they are reticulated pythons are large animals, and we need to keep that in mind. Secondly, I think the other thing is that you have to keep in mind, if you're interested in a reticulated python, one of the things that you should think about if you're considering a mainland or super dwarf or dwarf is your potential to house that animal for the term of its life. So if you don't have a lot of space and space to expand if necessary, then a dwarf or super dwarf would be better chances for you, because the chances of them getting large are slimmer. Some would say mainland in captivity will get anywhere from 16 to 20 feet. There are definitely animals in captivity bigger than 20 feet, but they are more of the exceptions. I will say that most people will tell you that a dwarf wouldn't get any more than 11, 12 feet, and a super dwarf shouldn't get any more than 9 feet. Shouldn't, right? But the reality of it is that when you're getting the animals, you want to make sure you see the parents. The parents definitely can help you determine the size that your animal may be, for example. That's no guarantee. I choose the mainland because I like big snakes. I like big animals, even with dogs, you know. Yes, I have the Yorkie Poo, who's a little smaller, defensive, aggressive little thing, but I also have a Rottweiler who is strong, wise, and protective. It's my spirit. I actually love larger animals, and I love working with animals that are challenging and very intelligent, and that's why I also think the mainland possesses more of that ability to think and react. To think and be non-reactive quicker than a dwarf or super dwarf, in my experience. So I also feel that when the mainlands are out, I can let them out and let them roam and feel confident that it's a slim chance that they're going to harm themselves, because I typically can see where they are at all times, hear where they're going, and they can't hide, pretty much. Where the dwarf, actually, you know, it's a smaller animal at this time, and her being a little bit more timid will come out, not travel as much as they do, and if she does, she can get into things that can harm her because she's smaller. I can lose her because she's smaller. I can't hear her as much as I can hear the mainlands if they even try to go into small corners. So overall, it's going to ultimately be up to you and what you're looking for in an animal. The variety of colors in the mainland and its ability to breed some awesome animals with simple coat arms is just amazing. There's some beautiful super dwarfs out there as well, and people are breeding more, and so you're starting to see more variety in super dwarf as well, and dwarf blood as well. I think that if you're purchasing a reticulated python, you definitely need a mentor in whichever you choose. A retic is a retic. A dwarf or super dwarf is going to have a full response. In fact, in my experience, the full response is greater in the smaller reticulated pythons than in my mainlands. My mainlands, they definitely, you know, I think they are older in most cases. Yeah, all my mainlands are older than my dwarfs, so they have the ability to understand how they're fed. But they also are not so food aggressive that I can't extend the food in there and have to get out the way. Believe it or not, with my dwarf, I literally have to get out the way when I feed her. So I have to feed her from a distance, using tongs to feed her, where I can literally just take a frozen thawed rabbit or guinea pig and stick it into the enclosure of the mainlands, and they do not react the same way as the dwarf or the smaller mainlands. Another myth, the golden child. So a lot of people, I know when I was researching reticulated pythons, talked about how golden childs tend to stay smaller. But yeah, but what is that golden child mixed up with? So my golden child is a motley golden child sunfire, had albino, and by the time that she was a year old, she was over 10 feet, and she was not heavily fed. Even now, she's still a lean snake. She's a long snake. So that was another myth out there. The golden child possesses a certain amount of dwarf blood, so they tend to stay smaller. That hasn't been my experience with the two that I have the golden child blood in. So yeah, so it all depends. I would just say that they are all amazing animals. I think that if you're going to purchase one or the other, I think that you want to get top of the line animals. You want to get animals that are well cared for. You want to get animals, like for me, I want people to purchase my animals that are going to raise my animals like their parents have been raised, and they're free roaming animals. They're not animals that are in an enclosure most of the day. Most of the time they are out. They're spoiled rotten. Like right now, they are sitting here. You got the burn behind me, and then you got two retics over there who is awaiting me to turn these lights off and let them out. And I love that. I love to let them roam. So I think that's important. How you engage with your animals, especially at an earlier age, is going to give you the better experience with them into their adult life, and under all circumstances you'll be able to maintain a great relationship that allows them to trust you and you trust them, and so therefore it makes for easy transitions even through things such as the breeding process and pulling eggs and things like that. So I hope that helps, you know, the individual who may be thinking about what type is best for them. They're all amazing animals. A retic is a retic, but you do have some nuances with the smaller dwarf and the super dwarf, and definitely something to consider if you're a person who even have to manage these animals alone. If you're managing mainlands, especially multiple mainlands, I would definitely suggest that if you're a person who lives alone, not saying that it's impossible, but it just doesn't make the most sense in safety and responsibility to not have someone who's there as a support or backup in the rare event, or in the event at all that anything slightly and remotely goes wrong, because they are massive animals. Although manageable, they are very large animals. So hope that helps. Have an amazing day, and please remember to check out Reptiles and Cocktails on Saturdays at 1 p.m. That is a live that I do. Sometimes we have special guests. Sometimes I'm in random locations and bringing you different content. And then on Mondays at 8 a.m. we start the week off with me and my boy, the Snake God, also aka Dre DW Exotics, and we start off Mondays with, you know, some reptile talk and other shenanigans, and it's a great time to get your week started. Mondays are a little tough to roll to bed, but if you roll to bed with us, it's great. And our Patreon, my Patreon Ridiculous, if you check my YouTube channel, the link is here, and that Patreon is for behind the scenes best practices on keeping, feeding, housing, engaging, just totally working to socialize and become intellectual partners with your reticulated python. Then the Patreon is definitely for you. Or you can become a member of the channel. You can also be privy to some behind the scenes footage of me and the new babies, and you can also get first dibs on the new babies if you're in the Patreon, or if you are a channel member of this channel. But until then, see you guys later. You all have an amazing day. Be blessed. Peace.